Good morning. It is time to get up with CP3. Still in OKC, and it doesn't appear that's going to change anytime soon. How does this end for the future Hall of Famer and when? Plus, Tua Tagovailoa said something yesterday that had everybody losing their minds, except what he said was absolutely right. You'll hear it, and you'll make up your own mind. And young, brash stars, talking the talk, walking the walk. Are these two ready to lead the Browns to the big game, or do we need to slow down on all this chatter? Answers to those and other questions as we get up with you this morning live from New York. So glad you've chosen to get up this morning with us. Jalen is ready to go. Dan is here. Dominique Foxworth has made the 15-foot walk.
It's a new blazer.
Take over here.
It is. That's the first time he wore that one.
Looks good on him.
I just copped it yesterday. I was
Must be new money.
Hey, who has better hair between these guys?
That's not a conversation.
I mean, Jalen, you win. You just called it out because that shape up stay sharp.
Man, look at these guys.
I appreciate that you're humoring them with the question. We obviously know what the answer is. Meanwhile, let's start with a superstar, Chris Paul. Sources telling our Adrian Wojnarowski that trade talks for the 9-time All-Star have stalled, and it is increasingly likely, Jalen, that CP3 at least begins the next season with the Thunder. According to Woj, Sam Presti, the GM, is not interested in surrendering draft picks to sweeten a deal. As a result, we are likely going to see Chris Paul play for OKC next year. And here's some opinion from Woj. He writes, Sam Presti welcomes the idea of Paul playing for his franchise this season, and Paul has warmed to the idea of the Thunder as a landing spot for the year based on the organization and a competitive talent level. Competitive, I guess, is the operative word. They're not going to be a terrible team. They're not a tanking team. They're not a team we figure will be, competing for the worst record in the league. But they're certainly not a contender of any consequence. So what will it mean for a guy like CP3 at this stage of his career to be there?
CP3, don't panic. Don't give him a discount. This is all noise. You and I both know when the season starts, they much rather have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as their starting point guard so they can develop and see if he can be that player for them in the future. These are what we consider smoke and mirrors. Anytime you move Russell Westbrook and his deal, of course it's going to be time to take a deep breath as a franchise. They moved Paul George in 72 hours. They moved Russell Westbrook in a week. They're not going to just jump up and move Chris Paul like that. They have to recalibrate. So for a team that Presti says, welcome CP3. Of course they do. He's under contract. Of course CP3 is warming to the idea of anybody's going to give me $120 million.
Right.
Okay. So ultimately, though, I think a deal will get done. But I agree, it probably won't happen before the start of the season.
We were at Orlovsky and I did SportsCenter right before we came on here, and I saw some of the numbers they put up on Chris Paul as we were getting ready to come on. He had career lows in basically everything last year. So my question to you, if and when he does eventually get traded out of Oklahoma City to a contender, which I think we both think eventually he will, is he still that? Is he still a guy who can be a central piece, not the best player, but a central piece on a potential championship team?
I think so. Chris Paul is not going to be Steph Curry, Dame Lillard type of productivity, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker. But on a nightly basis, he can play just as well as certain all-stars throughout the league. Now, big guys, we don't think twice about them playing into their mid-30s. So when Al Horford gets a 4-year, $100 million deal, we don't think twice. Or Marc Gasol opts back in for $25 million. But think about guys like J.J. Redick, Kyle Korver, who are shooters. We see them as guys that can play into their mid-30s. But CP3 doesn't wow you with his athleticism, Greeny. He's a smart player. He's a defender. He's going to make good decisions with the ball. There's always a place for a guy like that when he's healthy.
Yeah, and a guy who plays with the ball in his hands is probably not ideally suited to play alongside James Harden. So we probably haven't seen the best of what Chris Paul still has left in the last couple of years. One way or another, Paul on OKC long-term doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Let's pivot then to the Celtics and a point guard move that makes a lot of sense. Boston pivoted from Kyrie Irving to Kemba Walker. He gets a 4-year, $141 million max contract, and he was introduced in Boston yesterday talking about the decision to move on from Charlotte, the only NBA team he has ever known.
I would definitely say it was one of the hardest decisions of my life. Charlotte's all I know. I've gave that organization everything I've had, every single night. My time was up there. I'm ready to start a new chapter, especially here with, the Celtics. It's a winning organization, and I want to win. That's what I'm about. Throughout my basketball career and as a pro, I haven't won consistently, and I just want to get a taste of that.
We got done with the draft and we started our preparation for free agency as we started planning for Plan A. Our Plan A was Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter.
And there's another example of what you say after you sign Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter. Having said that, here's what I want you to do. Let's educate basketball fans out there, because let's face it, Kemba Walker led Connecticut to a championship on the college level, got drafted by Charlotte, and most fans haven't seen him since. We know he puts up good numbers. We know he's a good player, but he's been on bad teams his entire career. Just how good is Kemba Walker?
I think Kemba Walker is now going to introduce himself to the masses as one of the top players in the game at his position. He's been a 20-plus point scorer. He's led Charlotte to the playoffs. He's been an all-NBA player. He could get his own shot off the dribble. He can put you on skates as well as anybody in the league, whether it's making a three-point shot, a mid-range shot. He can finish at the hoop. His percentages are going to go up from three and from the field now that he's playing with better players around him. Now the Boston Celtics have the best collection of perimeter players in the Eastern Conference. You have Kemba. You're going to have second year off of injury in Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, and Marcus Smart. No team in the East can boast those five players are going to be as productive. I think the level of sacrifices that he's going to be willing to make to allow those guys to elevate, not only on the floor, just attitude and psychologically is going to allow those guys to flourish. The Boston Celtics are going to surprise a lot of people this year.
I totally agree. They're not going to surprise me. You know me. I've been saying since this happened, I think that they get better as a result of it. Here's the one thing I do worry about. What is the difference, Jalen Rose, between being a star player on a bad team that gets no attention versus now being the central figure on a team like the Boston Celtics that does have high expectations?
Everything matters. And Kemba said it. I want to win. I gave the organization everything I had. He didn't say the organization did the same thing in reverse. So now that he plays for the Boston Celtics, each play is magnified. Each shot, each turnover, each game is going to be on national TV. It's a bigger stage. And this is what he's actually ready for. It's the opposite of what I said about Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham got a chance to get the shine in New York and become a celebrity without winning. Kemba Walker was nondescript in Charlotte, playing great basketball, but not necessarily on the big stage. Now he gets to bring the same exact statistics, basically, as Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics, and now he's going to garner a level of appreciation.
So as we sit here this minute, you're going to break down your 8 Eastern Conference playoff teams a little later, but as we sit here this minute, how many teams in the East are better than the Celtics? I'm looking at Philly, Toronto, Milwaukee, Indiana. How many of those teams are better than the Celtics?
A grand total of 1. The Milwaukee Bucks are the only team in the East that's going to have a better regular season record than the Boston
Including
Celtics.
Philly.
Including Philly.
Okay. Well, Jalen's going to get a little more deeply into that as the morning continues. He will give you the 8 Eastern Conference playoff teams. I look forward to seeing where Brooklyn winds up on that list. We'll do that as we go. Meanwhile, let's get up and go. Final main.